stories about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. In the last episode, we suggested that the entire asset management industry, although we did focus it on the Worcester asset management industry, but we mentioned that this could apply to everyone. We suggested that the asset management industry needs to throw out the idea of condition assessments, or at least condition scoring, and replace it with something a little bit more real. In this episode, we are going to elaborate on that and explain why our alternative proposal also makes sense for the people who are directly influencing and directing maintenance works on the ground. We're going to describe to you why simply directing those works based on condition doesn't work, or at the very least is not as efficient as it should be or could be. Really briefly, if you haven't heard or seen it already, our bioretention in the real world training course is finally available. I know it took us way longer to get it out there than we thought it would, than we promised that it would, but it's out there. So this is a training course if you want to really understand how bioretention systems work. And bioretention systems are obviously the absolutely most dominant, most prevalent type of stormwater treatment system in Australia and potentially in many places of the world as well. If you want to really understand how they work as systems as a whole, not just as individual components, so you want to improve your ability to design good systems, maintain good systems, then that's the training course for you. You can find it at ideanthro.com/BITRW. That's enough for the promo right now. So, in the last episode, we suggest that we need to do away with the idea of condition assessment scoring and replace it with other metrics. A metric for functionality, which is literally how well systems work, so it could also be called performance, and maybe a metric for something like predicted lifespan of the future or predicted state of the asset. We're going to run with predicted state of the asset. So this is not only is what its functionality now, which is one metric, but what's its functionality likely to be like in a set period of time. So it gives you an idea of trajectory of the system. I'm going to start this by explaining to you why trying to run a maintenance program based only on condition or even only on functionality. So we'd argue, in the last episode, we argued at length why condition is a meaningless term because it's actually being used as a surrogate for other things like functionality. But we're going to suggest here that even functionality on its own is not a good way to be running a maintenance program. And we are making further argument for our thought here that we should do away with condition assessment scoring and replace it with functionality scoring and some sort of scoring about predicted lifespan or predicted future state of the systems. So what's the problem with running a maintenance program based only on condition or functionality? The problem of this is it just doesn't give you enough information about what's going to happen to the system in the future. Let's look at this. Let's assume that you decide to direct your maintenance program. Let's assume that you're scoring all of your systems, condition or functionality, I don't care which, on 1 to 5. 1's really good, 5's really bad. Let's assume you take the approach of, oh my goodness, well, we're meant to be keeping these assets. We're meant to be having these assets in good condition. We've got all these 4s and 5s. We better fix them up because they're not where they should be. Let's assume that you direct your maintenance program like so. The problem with that might be that you invest all your money in the 4s and 5s, and in the process of fixing them all up, all the 1s and 2s fall off a cliff because the current state of the asset doesn't necessarily tell you anything about how susceptible it is to change. The current state of the asset doesn't necessarily, or the current condition of functionality, the current state, which is literally what you have in front of you, often can tell you a lot about the future state of the asset. But a random functionality score or a random condition score doesn't tell you. There's not enough info there. The whole state with everything that the asset presents to you does have enough info there to tell you a lot about the future, but the wrapped up score of a 1 or a 5 or a whatever doesn't tell you anything about it. So you could have a situation that you fix up all the 4s and 5s, and in the process all your 1s and 2s have fallen off a cliff. That wasn't particularly efficient, given that it was probably cheaper to keep all the 1s and 2s in good condition than the 4s and 5s. So let's look at it the other way. What if you go, okay, well, I've heard you, Jack, prattle on for years and years about look after the good stuff, and then if you have spare cash, fix up the bad stuff. Heard you prattle on about, Jack, let's do it that way. Well, the problem that could arise there is you invest all your money in keeping all the 1s and 2s good, and you let the 4s and 5s sit off to the side. But turns out that a number of those 1s and 2s were really, really resilient and would have stayed as 1s and 2s if you'd done nothing to them. So you wasted money by throwing cash, throwing effort, throwing maintenance works at those resilient systems, when you could have actually spent that money on bringing some 3s or 4s or 5s back up to scratch. So that's not particularly efficient either. And so what we need to point out here is, in order to most efficiently run a maintenance program, you need to understand not only the current functionality or condition or whatever you want to call it, its functionality is the useful one though, you need to understand not only the current functionality of the asset, but also have an indication of how it will change over time, realistically in response to both your potential maintenance interventions and you not doing anything to it. Because the hierarchy of this should probably go something like, if you have a good condition asset that is resilient and is not going to change or degrade even if you do nothing to it, you should do nothing to it. If you have some good condition assets that are a little bit susceptible to change if you do nothing, then you should do something to keep them good. If you have some poor condition assets, but they've got the seeds of starting to recover, because maybe there's some species germinating in them, maybe there's some natural recruitment happening, maybe there's some canopy just starting to get established in them. So you've got a system that's currently bad, but it's actually kind of tracking in the right direction. Maybe you should give it a bit of a helping hand. And then finally, the basket cases that are bad and aren't going any better anytime soon unless you do something, they should be your last priority. But to do this, you need an understanding of both current condition and trajectory. If you're not managing with both, and if your scoring isn't directly accounting for both and the differences in both, because they are different, right? The factors that influence current functionality and the factors that influence future functionality are not the same, as we discussed in the previous episode. So you need scoring and you need a consideration of both. And so this just further reinforces the argument we made in the last episode, which is we need to get rid of this amorphous surrogate of an idea that is condition and replace it with the things that we actually care about, which is functionality and some sorts of indications. This bit needs a little bit of nuancing, but some sorts of indications of what will happen to the asset in the future, whether that's lifespan, whether that's what its functionality will be in a year or 5 years or whatever the time period is. These will present a far more useful metric, a far more useful number for us running maintenance and as asset managers. Okay, that is the concept. No need to prattle on more about this today. As always, I would very, very, very much love to hear your thoughts on this idea. You can find us all the usual ways. Ideanthro.com. By the way, check out the bioretention in the real world course, ideanthro.com/BITRW. Ideanthro.com. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can hit us up through all the obvious ways through those channels. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.